here we are with the very last session for the day, which is a panel discussion. I'm sorry that we're like a bit cramped. This space is not so big, but what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to introduce Fiya Bruxa and Fatspatrol, and then they'll take it from there and introduce Shalak Attack and EGR, and then they handle the whole thing. So hopefully, this is like the last page that I have to read today. It's been a lot of reading. Okay, so let's start with Fatima. So Fatima Muhyiddin, aka Fatspatrol, is an award-winning artist and curator of Indian origin, born and raised in the UAE with 10 years in Toronto and 2 in London. A true third culture kid. Having painted murals in 10 countries, commissioned on commercial projects for brands including Red Bull and Tiger Beer, and worked on outreach projects with challenged communities in Jordan and India, her career as a curator and artist captures the place of art in society from all angles. Fatima believes fundamentally in art's ability to help heal and move the world forward, as well as being a means of making sense of our existence, creating human connection and awareness, and finding universal truths. Her bold graphic style of drawing is a hybrid language from a medley of influences. Summers in India with humanitarian grandparents exposed to Indian folk art, artifacts, and mythology. Growing up in multicultural Dubai in a Muslim home exposed to Islamic art, calligraphy, henna, and folklore. The sister of a cartoonist reading comic books as kids, her mother's love for language, poetry, and narrative. All of this combined, Fatspatrol's work tells poetic personal stories with universal notes. Her interest in mark making explores an innate human inclination to express, depict, and find meaning through expression. Fatima has a BA in studio art and culture and an MA in sociology. Her works range in medium from digital drawing to large-scale murals, installation, and painting. She's currently based between Toronto and Dubai seasonally. And Fiya Bruxa, or Fiya Bruxa, is an international award-winning visual artist, actor, filmmaker, and playwright. Her artistic vision explores and celebrates the beauty, dignity, and perseverance of those who have or continue to overcome adversity and oppression. Fiya's visual stories are expressed through canvas, mural, graffiti, and installation, featuring exhibitions in select galleries and large-scale murals in Toronto, Montreal, New York, Sweden, UK, Senegal, Argentina, Chile, Brazil, Venezuela, and Colombia. In 2015, she painted the largest collective mural in Canada alongside her Essencia collective located in Toronto. Fiya has collaborated with local and international communities using art as a tool for social change and community empowerment. She has also worked in policy development and evaluation management. She holds a BFA in theater performance from Concordia University and a Master's of Global Affairs from the Monk School at the University of Toronto. Yay. Okay, and with that, I'll pass it on.
So, is it on? There we go. So first of all, it's such an honor and amazing to have all of you incredible artists on stage and all of you also attending. We don't have enough of these spaces to hear these stories and these voices, and so this is going to be a snapshot of, I imagine, much longer conversations that have to take place. And we have 2 artists representing Canada, and we're going to talk to them. They're going to each present themselves a 5-minute intro so that you can hear a bit more about their journeys, stories, and the details that they want to share with us. So we'll start off with EGR.
Thank you. My name is EGR. It's spelled EGR. Those are my initials. I think maybe people might recognize my work by seeing EGR written. So a little bit about myself, starting out. So I was born and raised in Burlington, which is west of Toronto, and grew up in, didn't have too much for an art program, so I took co-op which I was lucky to have, and in high school at the Burlington Art Center. And that's where I did my first mural. And I was about 15 years old. And that's when I realized that murals are temporary and they get defaced. So I had to fix my first mural right away from getting vandalized. So that was a learning experience. And so I was always into art, always drawing, and not having many resources. I found myself at Art Fundamentals at Sheridan College in Oakville, where I just became totally immersed in every medium there was and just totally inspired by everything visual. And from there, I took illustration, and that's when I started really noticing the graffiti on the streets. And friends of mine in school, we would, be sticking stickers in the hallways, and I sort of found that it was like an underground messaging system. And like seeing different tags pop up, and like when I would go into Toronto for concerts and events, I would see the graffiti along the train tracks, like on the way to Toronto, and see like all these new pieces, and it was just so inspiring. And going into Toronto for the 416 Graffiti Expo back in the late 90s, it was a hip hop event. So part of what drew me to hip hop culture was the fact that graffiti was a part of it. So I felt like I was like a part of this movement. So at an event, there'd be graffiti writers, break dancers, MCs, and DJs playing music, beatboxing, and it just felt like so much to be part of this community and something bigger than myself. And at this, the first 416 Graph Expo I went to, I saw Bomba painting this like big piece and just holding it down, and I was just like so inspired, like, oh, I could do that. And it really stuck with me. And so from that point, I just like kept on with illustration. And so how did it go? So just being very inspired. On my one summer break, I didn't want to like go back to school for the next year. I thought, why don't I just try my book? And I put together like a self-directed illustration book. I know we're supposed to be talking about murals here, but just the enthusiasm, like the eagerness, it was real. So I put my book out, and I actually landed contracts with the Toronto Star newspaper and the Globe and Mail. So I didn't go back to school after that, which had pros and cons. One, I was making a living, but then the cons were all my friends were still at school all together, like doing work together, and I was by myself. So that's another reason that drew me back into like hip hop culture and graffiti, just like painting with other people. Like when there would be an event, you'd just be so excited about like painting next to different people and having that. Okay, 5 minutes. So the first day I was actually published in the Globe and Mail was Concrete Canvas Festival in Hamilton. So everything started to come full circle at that point, and I became more involved in like the music and events and festivals, and that sort of led me to when I moved to Toronto shortly thereafter, like more work on the streets, and like because I would bring a canvas and an easel to like a hip hop event or a music festival or show, and like do a live piece while performers were doing their thing, and I'd raffle it off at the end. And it, selfishly, just feeling community, that was really important to me. Also making a little bit of a living from that was good. And then the work would advertise itself. Like down the street at the El Macombo Tavern way back in the day, I think like 20 years ago, I had a piece, a couple pieces there on the front of it, and everything just sort of like sold itself and led to another. My work was part of the first national street art exhibit in a major Canadian museum at the Royal Ontario Museum, and other galleries and events throughout North America. And I'm still, doing murals and everything in between, from illustration to artwork and that sort of thing. And it's just a pleasure being a part of this. One thing I just wanted to say was what inspires me the most, and what has to this day, what I think gave me so much enthusiasm to like bust out and do all this artwork. It was because just living kind of like maybe like a somber growing up, having lost my sister to sudden unexplained death of a child. I felt like I broke out of my shell when I really like came into art and having this community and people to paint with, and it just like everyone has their story, but for me, she appears in like the angels that I paint, and her memory lives on in my artwork, and I'm just really thankful to be a part of this community. Thank you.
And I'll just mention, EGR also was one of the reps represented Canada for the 50th year anniversary of hip hop. So she represented Canada on an international floor, and you flew to the UK, I think, with the delegation, or France.
That was an art show called Still Though, was part of that.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to highlight that.
Thanks. Thank you, everybody up here. It is a true honor to be here, too. Thank you to everybody who's been here throughout the day. It's been a long day, but it's been so inspiring, and I'm leaving here with my heart super full. And it's so nice to see so many new and old faces. I just want to say that this lady over here is my real sister. People are confused, but it's true, we're sisters. So my story is really in parallel with her story, and it's beautiful to share this stage with you too. I get really emotional. And every time everybody told their stories here, I was like, swallow it down, swallow it down. But we're Latinas, so we get emotional. Our parents are from Chile. We were born here in Canada. We lived pretty much across all of the provinces, moving around because of different reasons. But our parents' story and our ancestors' story, just like all of you here, have big impact to why we do what we do. And so I think, sorry if some of you don't know who I am. So my name is Shalak. I'll go back. And yeah, so I'm a visual muralist. I've been working with spray paint for about 20 years and with crayons since I was about 3. So our parents have a big impact on our careers because my mom always let us be very free with our art, and she would let us paint murals on the walls and underneath the furniture, and she would never stop that. She'd, oh, that's very interesting. Okay, like let it go. And our parents both instilled a lot of values. So the values of what we pass through our art comes from the values of our parents and the ones that were passed down from generations. And that's one of equality, and that we should all be treated with respect. And so I think I heard that going along and us telling our stories. I think that's like the number one kind of message is how are we sharing our spaces? Muralism, public art, how are we telling our stories, but how do they relate? And I felt so related to each one of your stories. It was so interesting because we're all born in different places and have different roots. But the human story is one so strong and that unites us all. And I think as artists, that's something, that's our major job, is to feel these stories and to tell them in our own ways, in our own voices. And we all have beautiful, unique voices that the world is here to hear, and our lights are here to shine. So I can't wait to paint again. With all of you and to see all of your paints too. Anyways, it's a little blurb because it's 5 minutes that we have, but we have a lot of history. It's a lot of, social impacts. Our parents came from Chile. They were coming away from a dictatorship because they believed in equality. So they came to Canada and we were born. And I think we all have our dreams, and I realized at an early age that art was my biggest kind of strength, that I felt more than my voice, more than my way I could write. Art was the way I could communicate with the world. And so because I wanted to be a marine biologist, and then I wanted to live like Jane Goodall in the jungle, but I wasn't good at science. So I ended up painting and dedicating myself to painting jungles on the street and bringing nature back to our concrete jungles as much as I can. And our parents are scientists as well, so bringing that, like, you know, this connection through science and through spirituality and through our way of life, and just reminding ourselves that we are part of nature, that we're not above her, but we are her.
So just to get this panel started, we've prepared some questions, but we're by no means trying to stick to them. It's just to plant a seed and see what happens. But before that, I just want to echo what everybody has said, like how amazing this is. I have a really bad cold, but the goosebumps have kept me warm today. So this first question, Hera, you touched on it a little bit, but it's about freedom. I know in my work, freedom, personal freedom, whether you're talking about freedom of expression or freedom of integrity or a quest for freedom, where does freedom place in your journey as an artist? Where do you feel it challenged, and how do you approach those challenges? I'm not going to give you this microphone because I have a cold.
All right. I'm glad you asked that, because it's actually something I've been thinking about quite a bit. Freedom, because I've gotten to a point in my life where the time I feel the most free is absolutely when I'm on a lift in the sun with music playing, painting, and it's truly like utter ecstasy for me. It's like flow state when all of my senses are doing all the same thing at once, and I'm completely addicted to it, to a point where I am really depressed when I'm not doing it. And I realize, like, when you're up there, this is what freedom truly feels like, and how rare it is to have that, or to experience that, and then how much more rare it becomes as you get older. And is like, and watching my family grow, and like my friends change, and like settle down in different ways, or it starts to make you feel more and more alienated, like the strange life we have, but also like the dependence upon that type of freedom. And so I've been thinking about the meaning of that, and what it means to be someone who's addicted to that type of freedom. And I haven't quite come to a conclusion about that yet, but that word had come to me while I was on a lift recently. And I was like, I made a mental note to think about it and talk about that. Because on the other side of it, you know, I have lived this very like charmed, beautiful life, but also I'm talking about a lot of things, and inspired by a lot of situations where people are being stripped of their freedom, like daily freedom, just to like live, eat, breathe. And of course, we're all thinking about the same thing, or at least like, you know, like oppressed by the evidence of people who are being stripped of their freedom at the same time. And so I'm just trying to figure out the psychological like dissonance that's happening between a person living my life and then also wanting to make a difference for people who do not have that type of freedom. So I don't have an answer for that, but it's I think it's a really specific dichotomy that I think people in our industry need to be thinking about, that especially if we're talking about social justice and the rights of folks and speaking towards freedom. Do I have the right to even talk about that when I get to experience such joy and ecstasy in what I do? Like the people I'm speaking for, or at least trying to represent or protect in some kind of distant way, like might never get to get like a piece of that. But then how do we figure out how to share it? And what does that mean? And is it, how do we like share that in a more lived in way? A question to answer your question. Anyone else?
No, maybe that's an, I don't know. Well, I'd continue. Sorry. Yeah, I will continue that thought. There is something in me too where I think I am super grateful for the freedom, and then also feel a little bit of pressure to make use of that freedom. So that's kind of also not free, I guess. So it's a weird thing, but then again, I'd rather have this than other problems. So it's like a luxury problem to have, like too much freedom. Oh my God. But for me, definitely, I don't even have to look far to know what oppression is, because my younger cousins in Pakistan didn't have a choice in who they married, and so that just the sheer fact that nobody chooses what my schedule looks like, and what I do with my money. If I want to, actually, kind of was thinking about owning one of those lifts because I like them so much and I talk about them so much. So I think I might start a rental. Yeah. So, but anyway, so that freedom, it is still so valuable, and as long as you don't forget that, and as long as you're grateful for that, you're already doing a good job. But if you demand that, that's where it gets, when you come with a lot of the artists who have lived a very privileged artist life in our genre. We know there are some characters that come with a long list of demands and then you're like, wait, that's not what this movement was all about. It was a grassroots movement, and it should stay in some ways. It should really always stay humble. Oh, no, you don't get the mic because you're sick. No, sorry. But your question, next question.
Oh, we're going on to the next one. Okay. I mean, doing graffiti as a kid, I never thought I would travel the world, so that's a lot of freedom right there. Because I've worked with kids that have like never left their block. They've never seen the beach, and they live in California. Like taking them places is huge freedom. But yeah, like you said, with the responsibility, you get all this freedom, but then you have to like use your voice in a way that really helps people, and that's intense. It's like, whoa, okay, let's make a difference. And then I would say freedom is also in like saying no, because when you have the freedom to like turn down jobs like that doesn't align with my values, and that's also like a form of freedom too, because you're like, I'm only gonna do things that I think are dope and that I align with. So yeah, good combo.
I think spray paint and graffiti street art culture has taught me about freedom. And I often say that graffiti has been like a passport, a freedom passport, because it's brought me to so many different communities, so many different countries, cultures, and lived lives, getting to meet people and work with people and share with people in so many different levels. It can take you to the poorest place to a castle on a mountain top kind of thing. And I think that culture and the purity of what you're sharing is that passport. It's like people feel that. So that interaction, graffiti and street art has brought me that freedom.
Yeah, I think just having your heart open is freedom, and it's just kind of how you look at it and being grateful. And I love how everyone's sort of considering other people in their own thought of freedom.
So, if we look back at the history of graffiti and muralism as well, but graffiti coming up to our street art now, and that journey that it's brought us through, and a new generation that's coming up in street art form. I want to know from you guys your perspective on what is there and what is the social political responsibility of an artist when painting on the street. So you're not painting in a gallery. You're engaging with the public in a conversation, whether you want to or not. So I would love to hear from you guys.
I think when it comes to work in a gallery, people are going there knowing that they're going to be exposed to something. But when you put it on the street, it is something that you have to consider how other people are going to interpret it, at least to an extent. We were just talking about freedom, and now we're talking about, I guess, responsibility for the designs and images we put on the street. Of course, there's like general, like personally, like I don't want to be recreating violence myself, but this has made me hung up. Like to create something that's like anti-war, you still might have to depict war, or do you? And just that whole dichotomy of you don't want to just keep feeding the monster, so to speak. So trying to like uplift and be conscious of our messages, that's always a consideration. It's always something that I think is a challenge that we probably are all, working through every day in our work.
I think it's super important to, contextualize where you are painting, to read the walls. I forget who was saying, I think everybody, but Agana even turned into a wall. So like, where are you and who is breathing and living in that space? You don't want to upset the communities that you're in. And so as a street artist, public art, you have to be very careful. Like you want to keep your voice as a unique artistic voice. You want to be true to yourself, but not overstepping a community, and being sure that you do it respectfully, because people will live and breathe in that space. So we have to do it in a way, like in tricky ways sometimes, telling our stories and telling what we are. I mean, I think just being born, we become a political body because we're all from different perspectives. It's like this broken glass that we all see the main picture, but we're all seeing it through different perspectives. We will have our way of speaking with the way we see the world, the way that we've been brought up, our experiences, but it's important to see the full picture as well.
I think, like I spoke about before, I think it's really important to sort of read the room and the space that you're in as much as you're able to do, but also to compromise with your artistic voice and like where you're coming from. And for me, it's kind of hard to balance those things because my world is also like totally fantasy sometimes. And I think it's nice to offer like a portal into like an escapist route as well sometimes, because the world is so like gray and colorless sometimes. And there's people who are going to live with that piece who often like that becomes their friend, the thing that they see often. And for that reason, I also avoid doing, like, I don't paint guns, for example, even though oftentimes I've thought about trying to talk about gun control and pieces. And I just think that it's more dangerous to depict a gun than to try to talk about it. And so you kind of learn about the social cues that happen pictorially within your work and figuring out like, what is it worth to even say? Or is that something I even want to welcome into my visual world? So things like that, you really have to think through. And I think that I struggle to as much as I want to be able to speak to every community I paint in like a really inclusive way, I know that I have limits. Like there's certain things, like I'm not that great at painting like children, for example. My work is like kind of adult in a certain way, I think. And so like knowing your limits and what you're good at, and then like finding a good place to try that, or like painting outside your own culture. I find it really a challenge to paint outside of my own culture. Even like painting at Yale, for example, they really wanted me to represent the South Asian perspective, and I felt uncomfortable doing that. So I spoke with the community and like went through a lot of edits and asked for advice about textiles and jewelry and stuff that would be fitting for that. So until I got to a place where I felt like I was collaborating more fully with that community so that I could represent them better. And so I think that's just something that has to do with the evolution of you as an artist and your ability to like incorporate other people's cultures into a message. Yes, long answer, sorry.
Yeah, I'm already confused because I kind of already forgot the question because I've been following and already twists and turns. But a couple of things that I think we should think about if we wanted to have design a city that allows a room for actual like very opinionated statements, pieces. That would be really cool if there were walls allocated for that, where the neighbors are cool with anything, and then it gets painted over in a month or so. I mean, that would be ideal. So we wouldn't have to create messages that would have to stand the test of time, because even your own opinions and political thoughts might change with new information coming in, blah blah blah. So I think maybe if there was a city to design, and if it had in each direction, I don't know, like on all ends and corners, that there would be those places. So it'd be interesting to have that, and I don't think any city has that so far. And yeah, I shouldn't just have a rental. I should also design a city.
Let's get you a lift. Well, with telling the story with graffiti, I found out that you could go on Google Earth and go back up to 10 years and see like the history of the wall. So you can kind of see what graffiti was on there. You could reach out to the artists even. So that's been helpful, kind of researching a place because you can't always be there. And nobody can tell your story like you can. So as long as you're like owning your truth and speaking from your own perspective, I feel like that's super solid. Yeah, sometimes you go out to paint a wall, but really you're going out there to have conversations with people, and it might slow you down. You might not be as productive, and you might be like, "Dang, I really just want to paint this wall, but I'm here talking to everybody." But really, it's those conversations. Those are like the jewels of knowledge. Those are sometimes they're hard conversations. Like I remember I painted Smash the Patriarchy one time, and like a lot of people had questions. They didn't know what it was. A lot of dudes come in, like it got really heated, and they were like, they're using you to gentrify the neighborhood. And, because you see a mural pop up, you're like, oh, here we go. Like, that means all the brown people are getting pushed out. And like, so it's a heated, like controversial thing when you're just trying to put up some art. And yeah, as long as you're owning your truth and speaking from your true authentic self, you smooth.
Staying on that note, did I unplug it? No. Staying on that note, though, is there a standout experience that you can share with us where this was a terrible project, I shouldn't have done this, this was a learning curve, this was super sketchy, like a really, really negative experience that we can all learn from, right?
Oh man. Well, why I take all my own photos, and I haven't told anybody about this, but the reason why I take all my own photo references now is because I painted somebody who I didn't know who they were, and we found out who they were, and it was for a pride mural, and we found out that they were homophobic, and it was all bad, and we had to change the mural because that person was really beautiful on the mural, but their spirit became very ugly to us. And so that was a big learning moment. I will never paint anything or anybody that I don't know, that I don't have consent for. And yeah, I would definitely recommend having all your own references and consent for everything. Never again.
Yeah, that sounds rough. I mean, I have so many stories, but I think I'm gonna share the most recent one with you, because it has to do with the big ugly world cultural appropriation, and God, I hate this so much. So one of the bigger murals, and I didn't share them with you in the slides because it just tainted. It just I feel bad about this whole project. It's a huge mural I did in Detroit last year, and it was with an organization called Street Art for Mankind, and they work with the UN and the 17 humanitarian goals, and basically they got funding from the city. And it was like 10 murals for 250,000 US dollars, which was all tax dollars. And it was an international group of artists. So I was one of them, but we came from all over the place to paint. And right when we were finished, a pretty nasty news reports showed up of the international artists swooping in and taking opportunities for Detroit artists. And also it stated that all these white artists came and depicted African American culture, or African Americans, and hip hop culture, whatever. And none of them were, it's just kind of like, it made us look really bad and evil, and as if we'd come in and take anyone's jobs, which was, it's just so often. Also, I don't feel like a white artist. And also I didn't paint an African American. So this kind of like, do your research right, And it's kind of, it's this thing. And I found out where this all came from. It actually, and what makes me sad is that it came from an artist I really respected. She is a Detroit muralist, and she got angry that, to see the funding go to a party she wasn't invited to. And that is not the way to network. If you want to be invited, you have to open the doors to your city, because otherwise no one's going to invite you ever, because it's just not the way it works, and it hasn't worked like this. And I'm so pissed because I really liked her work, and it's just the whole thing. It's just, yeah, I'm so sad. It makes me sad, as you can tell. It's not just, it doesn't make me angry, it just really makes me sad, because she deprives herself in the end by gatekeeping her, her city and those funds. And yeah, we need to let others in, because we can't expect anyone else to open their doors for them. Right.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that a lot of times muralists will go through, and I only speak to this because I've been through that as well, a period where you like really get kind of high off of being indignant about things, and feeling self-righteous about things, especially when we're talking about intense things like race. And I think generally anger is not an emotion that helps propel people forwards. And especially because I started getting into talking about race and heritage, there's a time when I would have been really angry about seeing, like, for example, I was walking in Little Tokyo in LA recently, and there's a huge wall right by the entrance to Little Tokyo that I constantly went past and was like, man, that's the wall. And I went past and someone was painting it recently, and I was like, oh, someone got it. And they're painting a Japanese baseball player. And I was like, I want to figure out who's painting that. I wonder if they're Asian. And I found out, and it's a Latinx artist. And I was like, that's dope, but I wonder if they reached out to try to find an Asian artist first. And I was like, someone who would have been dope for this is like Royal Dog, for example. He's Korean, but he lives in LA and he does photorealism, and he's absolutely incredibly talented and really nice. So I reached out to Royal Dog and was like, hey, I wonder if you knew this was happening. He was like, yeah, they actually reached out to me. But I said no, because I'm Korean. And because I'm not sure if he meant this, but I wonder if it had something to do with like the history between like Korean and Japanese folks or whatever. And I just thought that there was a lot of dignity in the way that he thought about his, like, the way he depicts people, and like, and, saying no to a huge wall like that is like is a really hard thing to do. And so I think that in a more matured, like, muralist perspective, you see the way people have thought through what they want to do, what kind of space they want to take up, and how you depict people of other races. And I think in general, once you like put away all the identity politics that go behind who's painting and what's being painted, if the mural is something really dignified, well done, and doesn't like seem off the cuff about race or something, like it's a good thing. Like, more good art is always a good thing. And so I think that in that situation, probably it's like disappointing to hear that like rabble rousing was made louder than the work itself, because the work that came out of that project was so incredible. So yeah, I'm not answering the question directly, but that's how I feel about that.
So I think starting off as a muralist, you learn a lot of things, what to do and what to not do. The mistakes is what hurts the most, and those ones that really hurt are the ones that are like the biggest lessons. I think a couple of the biggest lessons that I've learned, and for people who are wanting to learn the tricks in the trade, is make sure you are owning your copyrights. Never sell your copyrights, your moral rights. sometimes people can trick you through contracts. And that's number one. I've had to learn so much legal language and be in touch with different organizations that helped me get in touch with lawyers when I didn't have the money. There are, like here in Toronto, I think it's, what's that? There's an organization that helps you deal with that. If somebody has the name of that, you can just let them know. Yeah, because if I would have known that when I was younger, I would have saved myself a lot of headaches and heartaches of losing some artwork and losing the ownership of art, a couple of pieces only. But there have been some of like those pieces that have gained crazy social media that's like now on the Drake video and like everybody's blinging in front of it and you're like, damn, that's like the only mural that I don't have my copyright on. So yeah, so sometimes it hurts, but the lesson will keep hurting and making it stronger for you to protect yourself in the future.
Man, these stories are bummers. I don't really want to add to it, but what can I say? It's just such a buzzkill just thinking of all this stuff. But I think for myself, just one takeaway that I've had, you know, some people have asked about burnout. And I mean, I have experienced it myself. I guess you could say a debilitating time in my life where I couldn't paint. And for many years, I thought it was the paint. So I just abstained because every time I would feel the paint on my skin, I got that little area that's exposed. And yeah. Yeah. and unless you get a face mask or a full body bubble would be good. But I started to have some very scary, like autoimmune type symptoms, which led to like all this like abstaining from painting and then this and that. And then it took a really long time to get diagnosed with some fragrance allergies. So it actually wasn't the paint. And it was just this huge mystery and avoidance, and which spiraled into this like negativity of avoiding many different things. But not to get too dark here. I actually posted on Instagram when I was doing this piece where I had rented a boom, but I wanted to get one of those clean powered ones. I think propane is the cleaner kind. And it ended up being like this big gas guzzling like diesel thing. And it was just giving me like so many, like on top of everything else that I was dealing with. And I was using the water-based spray paint as well. And so I still had to like do my whole outline with this diesel thing. Anyways, I got through it, but I sort of put a rant on Instagram and someone said, "Oh, well, have you tried retraining your brain?" And I'm like, okay, sure. Yeah, wait. And I think I remember seeing something about it. So I looked into it. So retrainingthebrain.com. And I got like super deep into these neuroplasticity based mindfulness techniques, which is actually like about an hour a day for about 2 years. And I went from being down to about 14 safe foods and not having any sort of life, completely isolating myself from people, family. This is like before COVID even. But I was able to like regain, like I'm here, I can touch people, I can, you know, paint again with hardcore paints. So there is hope if you're starting down a slippery slope of symptoms. Like, don't get caught in that. Know that you can change your life. Like, you can truly like help heal yourself through your mind and through dedication and practice, and it's possible. So I just want to pass it over to you. You can give a bummer story.
So I actually want the opportunity to have, like, everybody's young, but also seniors, to have elders, muralists, women identifying muralists on the panel from this generation and watching a younger generation come up. I want to ask you guys like your advice for younger generation, not just general advice, but in this context. So we see street art gaining popularity, and then we see the commodification of art, and we see how it's become a business. And with that comes centralized institutional decision makers and gatekeepers and who you sign your artist rights to in order to get that contract. There's all different kinds of contexts, but I see a new generation of artists coming up, and I don't know if this will speak to you, that wasn't what I experienced when we would just go raw on the street and there were no regulatory, there was no institution that was going to fund you. You painted because you were passionate about it. You wanted to just go out and paint on the street. And I see a new generation coming up where I think there's a misconception that you have to have a studio arts degree, that you have to get a contract and you go straight to the wall and then you're going to have this career as a street artist and you do graphic design and you get approved, and it can't be too political and it can't be too social because you need to be approved. And so I want this generation that experienced that different experience of coming up on muralism, like, what is your advice to the new generation coming up? How do they navigate this new centralized, gatekeeper, institutionalized commodification of expression on the street?
I think you said it.
Well, we're in the right place. So it was very different in my time. It was basically just like advertising, which we were bombarded by, and illegal billboards was actually a problem as well. So like when you would go to the street, you would just be conscious of like, who are you painting over, if anyone? Like, who are the tags on the street? That's kind of important, because if you aren't aware of that, the tags are probably going to come back. But Fiya's question, I got to think about that for a minute.
I think it goes along with what you're saying. I don't know if it's a social media pressure. Like when we started painting, Facebook, Instagram, all this stuff, I think like there was little social media things that you have to get on your computer and hook into the internet, and it would take a while. So I think there is a lot of pressure through social media and branding, and the way that social media now is kind of like a real corporate tool. It's been changing, and what we see today is how we can all become products for something, and how we can sell ourselves. So I wish, and it goes back also to that freedom question, I wish and I hope for each and every one of you that you get to have your time to play, that you get to connect with other artists, that you guys get to jam, that you guys get to that freedom of painting for the love of painting. And I think Hera also said that, and it was repeated. When there's different contexts to why you're painting, if it becomes a job, it has different connotations to it. But make sure that you're out there learning your artistic voice, your authentic, finding it first, and then you build it up. And then like if you can make money from that, it shouldn't be the goal. It should be kind of like one of the flowers that come from the treasures of the beauty of creation.
Yeah, well said. I think it's almost hard to give advice in this realm, because I used to, when asked a question similar to this, I used to say, like, there's a sensibility now that if you're a gallery artist, you should also be a muralist. Like, everyone needs to paint murals. You should want to paint murals if you're going to do art. And I don't think that's true. And I used to, this might not sound helpful, but I used to say, like, because I love painting so much, I know so many of us do, and it is such a like sacred, difficult thing to do. If you don't like painting outside, don't do it. Because I know a lot of people who hate painting murals because it's really hard on the body. It's difficult. It's confusing. It's challenging. You don't have to do it if you don't like it. But I also don't need to give that advice, because it'll just happen naturally. And if you do love it, like, it will be very clear naturally. I think that having been in this industry long enough, I can tell when someone loves what they're doing. And so to that point, I would say, don't feel too oppressed by the pressure of the internet and Instagram and like thinking about how the photo is going to look and who's going to see it and like what does it mean and how can I market it, or even if you get a good photo, sometimes you don't even get a good photo by the time you leave. You have to remember it still lives in the world. It's still part of a community. It exists beyond the internet. And sometimes you have to check yourself with that because it's, you know, social media like gets to everybody's brains. But I feel so grateful to be in an industry that it lives in the real world, by nature, by definition. And that's something that I hope will remain, with like the growth of AI and all of that. I have a feeling that hopefully this industry will strengthen in the face of that because it is still such an artisan craft, and it is so like hands-on and so almost anti-machine in a lot of ways. And so to that point, I would just say work really hard. And like when, you know, sometimes I get a lot of messages, I don't know if you guys do, but it's just like messages of being like, hey, do you want to be like brand ambassador for this like makeup brand or like whatever. I'm like, I'm not an influencer. Like I'm so far from being an influencer. I will ruin your brand if you put me behind the camera. Like I'm gonna mess it up for you. People have the sensibility that we have to do all those things, but it's like a, you know, it comes from like an ancient craft, painting on walls. Like it's a very deeply like built into the history of the world culture thing. And I think that beats out the internet in every way of it. So always the answer to everything is just keep painting, keep painting.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, there are enough walls out there. I mean, we can't all paint Times Square. I guess nobody really can paint. No one can paint there. But there are villages. You know, it's not just the metropolises, and we don't all have to paint in Wynwood. You know, where all these people pass by. We might just paint on a shed and maybe only some, I don't know, some rando passes by who doesn't even have a camera phone, but then it still exists. And that's the thing. I think the what I mentioned earlier about how I made money of other stuff than art, and then so I could invest into my art. I think that is probably one thing I would always give as advice to emerging artists, like maybe just maybe do an illustration job or do, I don't know, work in a restaurant or something, but then you save up and then you do what you want to do, because it's just all of, when looking back on those 20 years, the only murals that I really liked were the ones with total freedom involved when it came to the messaging. And that's crazy because, you know, I've painted so much, and even with everything that is now open to people and social media and all, it doesn't really, so the number of likes and clicks and how many views you got on a reel you post or something, it doesn't ever really come close to the amazing feeling you have when you've painted a wall. And you might have painted that wall at an abandoned building, and that will always trump anything you get on your bank, into your bank account, or likes, I think.
Deep. I mean, to me, the first internet, I mean, yes, trains and like seeing styles go through different cities on trains. I mean, before, like, we would take photos of graffiti and like send them to each other in the mail, you know. I didn't even know other girls that wrote graffiti for the longest. And then now you can like find, there's accessibility to anybody and everybody. It's all like right there in your hand. So yeah, I'm coming into my OG status, thinking about trains and how like art first moved. And like you said, there's plenty of blank walls in the world. I don't like painting over other people at all. Like if I can avoid it, people were like, "Oh, just paint over that wall." I'm like, I'm good. Like there's blank walls everywhere. Like I really don't want to paint over anybody ever. Like no, thank you. One piece of advice is that you are never like as good as the last thing you painted. Like you can always paint something better. Sometimes you have to paint some really ugly, shitty thing in order to get someplace where you want to be and just have fun and like don't put so much pressure on yourself. And then also like nothing's ever really done. Like you can spend years painting one wall, but it's done enough. Like you just gotta move on and like keep it pushing. Like because really you could tinker forever. And just that our art is our medicine and that it's really nurturing neighborhoods and that nurturing needs to be normalized beyond gender. And yeah, so keep your medicine alive.
So, hello. So a question that brought us here: how has your gender identity or other socially prescribed and perceived identities played a role in your journey as a mural artist?
Are you sure? I'm trying to think. All right. Well, okay. I think this group here, it shows how much we all want to connect, and that there is I think a sisterhood that I feel in this room. And I was thinking, why is that? Because I mean, it's just so we are kind of, excluding others by just being here right now, right? Aren't we? I mean, this is interesting that we have to do this, but I think it's important. And right now I am working, I got a fund approved for creating a platform I want to call Sister Pool. And it's a platform, a database, and you're all going to be invited once it's out. I promoted the shit out of it. And you're all invited to enter your data and your photos and just make yourself visible through that tool, because curators, festival curators or event managers, or sometimes they need easy access to your names and your numbers and stuff to invite you, because especially when we choose our names ourselves, sometimes it's hard to say, yeah, well, what gender is this? And sometimes we do it's we're still at this in this well, we're still at this phase where it's about quotas a little bit. When I am invited to a street art festival, sometimes I get invited by the pure fact that I have a vagina, and that's something they have. That's a quota. That's a box they have to tick, in order to get that funding and that funding. And it's just so it's kind of sick, but it's still that way. So again, by the platform that I'm creating, I kind of want to take the excuse of this, oh well, we don't know any femme representing artists. Well, then I'll be like, well, but there's the website, you could have checked that website. So I'm trying to figure out how I can benefit us and the sisterhood, basically. So it's a process, and I wished it wasn't like this, but it is like this. And also I think a little bit what no one really has talked about, except for you a little bit, was with what does motherhood do when you are a career artist, because you have other people to think about, and you cannot really travel as much as I could do now, because you have your kids to take care of, and I don't even have my dog to take care of anymore. My mom took it. But that's another thing when I invite people, because I curate as well. So when I invite my female artist colleagues, I always make sure that there's a budget for them to bring their kids and bring a nanny or bring someone along to take care of the kids while mom was painting. So that is just to raise awareness to that, and just, point out that there might be a bigger family involved. Because no one bats an eye when a male artist says, yeah, I'm coming with 3 assistants. And then we'll just like, yeah, sure. But if you, as a female artist, you'll be like, well, I'm going to bring my husband and the kid, and, we need a special room for that. They'll be like, wait, but that kind of feels like a commodity. Like, no, not a commodity. What's it called? Like, that's kind of find it's a little fancy, right? But, so we need to just be aware of, that there is a little bit right now still to figure out, and And yeah, we're working on the solutions.
That sounds awesome. Gender's so weird. And confusing and ever evolving, especially within my own world, that I struggle to even talk about it. I generally even like stray away from doing things that are billed the way this event has been billed because it's confusing. And not in an exclusionary way, but then my brain starts doing this math thing where it's like, okay, well, what if it's like women and non-binary folks, then where like do we need to specify that trans folks are welcome, and then why doesn't it welcome like someone like my partner who's a trans man who used to be a woman, like then that person's being excluded, and like then it's like, oh my god, what do we do? Like spinning out, and it's like everyone but cis men, but like why, that kind of thing. And I think it's important to like look at it in a solidarity sense. Obviously everything we're doing here is supposed to be very positive. It is very positive. But that's why, like, I don't know, when you do specific work within the gender realm, you start thinking like the more you understand the binary, the like less the binary makes any fucking sense. And I think what we're trying to drive towards is like getting to a place where everyone understands the binary enough to where we can kind of explode it. And I don't know when that's going to happen. I have a feeling everyone is like totally random places on the spectrum, and then everyone starts being like lizard people, and that's how I understand all my friends anyway. So just like everything's really weird in my head when it comes to gender. So in that sense, like I start to look more at just like, I don't know, friendship and solidarity and like painting and just what people are painting and what they want to say about what they're painting rather than who they are. And then just looking at gender in terms of like structural systems and how people are treated within the like the boxes that we're being put into. And so in that sense, I haven't figured anything out really, other than that it is really important to like create safe spaces for like queer folks and femme folks and people who've been like historically oppressed. And if that means creating spaces like specifically for QT BIPOC people at the time being, I've definitely felt like much safer in those types of spaces within like the kink scene, for example, like then that's what we need to do. And I don't know anything else surrounding that other than that. I think it's just important to keep like uplifting other people who aren't, you know, haven't historically been given all the boons in the world. And I think Hera does an incredible job of that, of like even collaborating with other like femme people and other women does a huge thing for like bringing that person into your world, uplifting them. That project sounds really dope. I always forget to talk about this, but I started a platform on Instagram a few years ago for all QT BIPOC artists that I curate. It's called the Leveret Spirit on Instagram. The Leveret Spirit is also known as the rabbit spirit in Chinese mythology, is the protector of the queers. And so that's why that's called that. And then it's just curation of all like QT BIPOC artists, and I sometimes give out microgrants when I do work that has to do with gender. So you go there if you're trying to like curate something really cool or find other friends who do like queer work. And then of course curating that space also makes me feel like I'm excluding other people. Like there's a lot of times I see art from someone super dope who's like either queer and not of color or the other way around, and I'm like, shoot, I can't share this, but I'm creating this space because it doesn't exist yet, at least as far as I know. And we can just keep and then I'll share it, but I can't post it or whatever. And it's all weird, but like we just keep carving out spaces that feel comfortable and seeing where they lead us. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is a deep question, and I think it's fundamentally changing and evolving, and I think we're all learning with each other too. Going back to the original question, I think I see myself as a little girl with not such a big voice and very shy. And so through my art, I found my voice, and I found, I could get away from these boxes that you're a little girl, or this is the way that girls are supposed to act, this is your role in society. So I could break that. And I think through painting and spray paint and graffiti and street art, I think I started with a lot of anger, and I think somebody else mentioned anger. And I would use that anger like a fire extinguisher kind of like explosion onto the wall, and it was so therapeutic. And I had to do that a couple days ago. I hadn't done it in a long time. But it's a great feeling. But as time went on, that anger kind of has come down a lot. Maybe that comes with age and the understanding. And but that, for example, being at a wall and painting there with a group of 20 other guys, and then people walking by, oh, that's nice. Oh, you're the assistant? You're holding the ladder? Like, no. But I have always been in great company and supporters of my brothers and also my husband, Bruno Smokey, who we have our Clandestinos art collective together. We've been together for 14 years, and when we met, we had both been painting on the street about 6 years by ourselves, like not together. So that was, anyways, a whole other story. But it came together because now I have my family, Clandestinos family, which we have our daughter, Violeta, and I'm now living my motherhood and also my artist career, sharing that with my family. And we have to really stand up for ourselves as well. And that's something that I'll tell you that mothers should. And in Latin America, for example, in Brazil, and I'm not sure in Chile, but I know of examples of, graffiti jams. They will have access there with full daycare involved so that women who are mothers can actually show up and paint all day and not, if not, they would have to be at home with their children. So a lot of activities, art activities and murals and things that I do, my daughter comes along, and today I let her stay home because it was going to be a long day for her. But she's usually with me, and I think that's also important to share these worlds because these are natural worlds. The art world is kind of a fluid world, a natural world, and I would have loved to share all of you and all of this knowledge with her. So, but yeah, it's important to support mothers, females, and non-binary. We all support each other through all these communities.
Well said. That was great. And plus, it's recorded, so you can play it for her.
Oh yeah, it's true.
I think it's just equality. We just want across the board. And yeah, ditto to the anger thing. I think as a teen, just came like busting out. I have a lot of paintings that are like that as well.
Did you want to?
Sorry. No, that's good. I was marinating. I mean, of course you want to be recognized for being a dope artist, not just because you have a vagina, but it is a powerful, we're portals. Like, we have the ability to have life come through us. Like, that's pretty freaking incredible. And it should be celebrated and uplifted. And it's funny because when you have a baby, you go on disability, like you have a disability, and it's like, actually, you have a freaking superpower like inside you. And we all have male and female energy within us, like we all have a balance of that. And I was called Mama Agana before I even had my own kids, because I taught kids, mural art. And so they were all my kids. And I feel like, how I use like graffiti on the bottom of my walls to kind of protect them, and how you kind of do that with the kids' art. Like, those are your kids, like you don't have to birth a kid for them to be your kids. And man, it's just, it's a powerful force of nature, and we need to uplift it.
I'm going to add some of my thoughts too. I know I'm not supposed to be answering the questions, but I think through experience, so I studied theater and then went into theater, film, and television. And that's when you go in for casting, it's based on your looks and your appearance. And in Canada, it was like, you're too exotic. You're this. You're going to play the Amazonian. Number one, you're going to play this. Oh, oh no, you can't play the lead role because you're not Caucasian enough. Nobody's going to want to watch that. And it led me to a point where my sister invited me. She was like, just come paint, just come paint. Like, you can paint. And we had painted before, but I never took it seriously. And when I got to the wall, I could paint and the art spoke for itself. It wasn't what I looked like. It wasn't about my gender. It wasn't about the identity. And it was so liberating to be able to speak. And of course, your art is always going to be an extension of your lived experience. So there is that in the art itself. But I felt free because it wasn't about my gender anymore. And I think sometimes we look at legends or mythology that guide us and teach us. And 2,500 years ago, in civilizations across the planet, there were goddesses in different cultures. And 2,500 years ago, those goddesses started disappearing across all cultures. And you see the atomists in Europe that are born, and for the first time were philosophers that conceived of particles that were separate from ourselves that we could study. And you look at the particles and you are no longer a part of it. So mythology before that was we were connected to Mother Earth. We were connected to the elements. And you now start having a narrative that starts changing. And 2,000 years ago, you have the Bible, then you have, or the Torah and the Bible, then you have the Quran, which are similar stories, but each interpret the characters in different ways. And these are three big fundamental books that have guided our mythology and our story for the last 2,000 years. And those stories begin by saying the world was created for man, for woman, and we have integrated and weaved in this mythology in the way that we interpret our lived experiences to the point where we don't even question it or we don't discuss it. And at what point did we become separate from Mother Earth? And so we are just beginning to deconstruct that patriarchy. So that thing about identity politics and like how do we navigate that? How do we journey that deconstruction? It's like there's no right or wrong. We're just trying to understand it. And as curators and with Mural Routes and having the discussions of putting this event together, it's like, how do we include everybody, but also make this space? Like, why is it important to have this space? Why are we calling it this? What does this mean? Why are we having this emotion? Why are so many people reaching out and can't fly into Toronto, but want to know if they can access this conversation? Like, it's speaking to something. And in Canada, this is the first time we have this kind of event of its kind, which is kind of mind-blowing. So it's also exciting to see all these artists that are interested, that want their voices heard. And I just want to recognize something that I heard from all of the panelists in the conversations today, that having grown up in a generation where most of the artists that we would paint with were men, and maybe it was like one woman, and you would be asked if you were the girlfriend of like, who's actually painting? Oh, you're not the girlfriend, you're painting. To see now like where it's going. And the one conversation that I heard that was different from what I've been in those spaces before was the self-care. What are we eating? How are we caring for ourselves? Our ancestors. What does it mean when we work with community? I was like, oh, this conversation is different, innately different. Like, what's happening? Something almost like untangible, which was, I think, for me, really beautiful to witness today, like hearing all the stories. And I just want to check in, how much time do we have?
Maybe, yeah. Can I add one thought real quick? Because I was just thinking about, because maybe you want to hear some practical stuff too, because it got very spiritual at some point, and it's all great, but maybe in a way, it's not so much about gender really, but more about a hard and a soft side within yourself, and that's why we connect the hard with the male, blah blah blah. But it's kind of, I mean, you need both when you're out there, and I think that's the thing where sometimes I just fake being a guy when I write emails, and then I'll be the male assistant, And like, yeah, I'm gonna have to check in with her. She's really, and so you just have to be the good and the bad cop for yourself. And that is easier to do when you actually are two people, because then you can assign the roles and you don't have to switch, within yourself. But it is, it's easy. And there's so, I mean, we all know that. I'm just repeating basically what others have said. There's so many nasty words for women who make it difficult, and then there is the bitch and or the bossy, being bossy, and there's so many words. And in German there's just very, very mean words describing women who know what they want and in a career space. So I mean in a business space. And I mean, even the word fame bitch, I was called a fame bitch just because, fame bitch. It was because I was dating graffiti writers. But I mean, those were the guys I met. Most relationships are created at work. So that was my workspace. So that was the pool of people I had. They all did graffiti. So anyway, so there are so many things like, oh, she's hysterical, blah, 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 or she's emotional, or I don't know, there's all this stuff. It's not just in the art world, it's just generally, it's systemic. We have this, and then we have to know how to pull ourselves out and also stand up for ourselves. And we don't have, well, we're pretty new to this, but not that new. And I found out the older I get, the more I'm able to call out, especially men, when they get, I'm pretty good at that. Yeah, last year I made 3 men cry that I worked with. Kind of proud. No, not really. No, sorry. I'm not proud. Well, one was absolutely deserved. But there was just, they were being unprofessional, but they're like, oh, that's so unprofessional of you. Like, oh yeah, well, you're the one crying. And, you're trying to, it's just there, it's this thing, it's not, is it male or female really, but it's like, can we be both? Can we be soft and open because we paint and create, but then also tell someone to fuck off who stands too close taking photos of us all day? So that is the difficulty. So that is a little bit schizophrenic, because at some point when you're out there, you're loving the world and in tune with everything, but then at the same time you really have to defend your boundaries, and that is so difficult. But I kind of think it's not just for us, but it's also for guys, so maybe it's just the human experience ultimately, but I don't know. Yeah, sure.
I just want to say that actually through painting on the street, I part of what I had said before, but I really learned how to take my space, and some of that is like you say, how can that masculine energy, sometimes it's like, oh well, what would the guys do, and why am I not doing it like that? Like, why would I be shy about just getting up and like back in Montreal, hip hop was how we got introduced to graffiti, to breakdance, to DJs. It was our community. We had so many friends that were in graffiti crews, and I was like 17, like, yo, I want to come out and paint too. Like, I was already doing big canvases and art, and I just loved art, and I wanted to go out. They're like, yeah, sure, yeah, like next time. Nobody would ever call me at 2 a.m. to go out and paint. And I didn't know how to just go out and do that until 1999. Me and my sister got some paint at the paint shop. I was 17, I think, and you were 19 or something. And we ended up getting stopped by the cops and having to deal with that. And they were really surprised that it was 2 young girls painting graffiti on the street. So that was our first experience. But after that, I never got the opportunity, and I was looking for the opportunity, and I was asking for permission from my friends, or, from the people who were the gatekeepers in a way. And until I moved to Brazil, this was in 2004, where the culture was a lot more open, and I met a friend, and we were both working in the same community, and I was helping teach English to children, and he was teaching graffiti to the children. So I said, oh my God, I would love to learn more. And he's like, you know what? You do? It's that simple. Let's go buy paint tomorrow. We're going to go paint. And that was the first time that I was like, oh, what? Oh, it is so simple. And somebody said, maybe it was you, just do it. It's all like, it's a jump and you just got to do it and you don't have to ask permission. And that's what graffiti taught me. And it's taking back your space, and it's so empowering because it's not about asking permission. It's not about doing it the right way. It's about just doing it. And when you're doing it, you're going to find your voice. You're going to, whatever, everything comes out. But I just wanted to kind of give homage to that graffiti culture did teach me how to take my space and find my voice.
So I'm not sure if we should open it to Q&A or.
It's 4:25, so yeah, we should open it.
Yeah, so we're going to open it to the floor if anybody has questions for the panelists.
Tips and tricks on like some of those details seem really fun, or just like getting rid of like, do you play with your caps, or like you send like technique type stuff, and then tips and like that. I seen something about a plastic fork the other day, and I was like, what? So I don't know, taking a plastic fork with little whisks on like the fur or something.
Wait, I saw that video.
Yeah, I know. But it's so funny because I've once painted with a guy who was like, oh man, I found the perfect stick to do a double line with this, and then it was like a dried snail. But anything works, I guess. That's what I wanted to say. Trial and error.
What?
You use what do you find?
Yes, a technical question. Spray paint, yay! No, it's really, really cool that this conversation has been about like our lives and like lived in experience. That's really rare, actually. But I love spray paint. I think that just can't, like, people ask me this all the time, and I love giving spray paint, like initial spray paint lessons to people, because sometimes that's like the push you need to get you the like confidence to get up on a wall. But just can control is like, for me at least, is and I know that's like a frustrating answer, but for me is like the greatest tool that you have, which comes from experience. If you have like can control, then you can kind of make whatever you're trying to get work with like the caps that you have, like a standard skinny or a standard fat. I've also seen people take a receipt and like fold it in half and put it halfway under the cap to get like thinner spluttery lines. I know Hera has like a secret cap thing. Yeah. I'm like I guess I'm just lazy. I'll just like blast it out and then cut back to get the effects that I want. But everyone, like, the longer you do it, the more you develop your own like secret skills. And I've seen some crazy stuff. I've seen some really crazy like cap attachment type stuff. But like the genre is always evolving. Like, have you seen what Hoxa's doing? People are making insane contraptions with like sprinklers and stuff that do crazy paint stuff, and people love that stuff too, like process. So I think just look at it with as much as avant-garde an eye as you want. This industry is like ripe for people who are experimenting with how paint is applied.
I just want to add to what you said. I think there's also like a treasure in sometimes if you know somebody's painting and just go and watch. Watching process is such a huge tool that you can have. So like if you see some graffiti artist or muralist painting, like you just go and watch and you can see the way that they're working, because it's such, sometimes people can ask me like, what's your process? And I'm not even gonna know how to tell you because it's so intuitive and you're just at it and you're just go and it's hard to explain it. But like the best explanation is the scene, the process.
Yeah, I guess the caps are only going to help you so much. It's true what they say about the just having can control and just practicing a lot.
You have like a six-pack in here. Like, you don't see that, but that's a mighty hand.
I was just gonna say the fork thing wastes a lot of paint. Don't do it.
I tried it actually. It was like cool the first squirts. That was a big mess. I would say back in the day we had watery paint. We only had a few colors. Now we got like airbrushes basically in cans now, and every color and high pigmentation and low pressure. Like, We are so spoiled with every color now. Traveling, like when I went to Senegal, they had some like reject batch of paint from China that was really bad, and they only had fat caps. That was it. So I saw kids that had only been painting like a year or two, and they were already better than people that had I knew that were painting for 10, 20 years. So I was like, wow, they're doing a lot more with a lot less resources. And so I've noticed going to other places, like people are more innovative with their materials because they don't have access to as many that we have here. Well, I don't know about here, but like in more privileged places that have more accessibility. Um, like when I went to Chile, I was using spray paint for everything, and they were like, "What are you doing?" Like they use buff paint for everything, and then they might have one can of paint that then they go back in, and then they do their thing with the one can. And I was like, dang, like that's pretty resourceful, if you can only afford one can of paint. Um, yeah, so uh, I think the more people you paint with, too, the more you learn, the more you collaborate. I'm all about dancing on the wall with folks. Like some people collaborate, but they paint together, but they really is like, I'm gonna paint one side, you paint the other. Like I like how y'all painted together, but your characters were like on top of each other and connected. Like that's dancing on the wall. Like that's a real collaboration. So I'm all about dancing on the wall. And also the sound. I really listen to the can because the can is talking to you. Like you hear the pressure, you hear how much paint is coming out. And there's ways to lower the pressure and just get innovative, get busy.
I mean, to be honest, the best way I've learned can control is to not listen to the can. So you're like listening to really loud music, and it's literally your finger that's figuring out where those sweet spots are. And I never thought I would say this, but sometimes it's okay to use a brush.
Kidding. I like the rollers. That's dope.
Wait, can I also say I was talking to someone earlier. So what's a good way to do this is find out where there are festivals and then just go and try to like reach out and volunteer. Because if you're a volunteer and then first of all, you get to see the artists and the techniques, and maybe you get a hand on leftover cans. So that way, I mean, a lot of the artists who are being flown in, they can't take the spray cans with them on board anyway. So you just, ask them nicely. I always donate my spray cans to whoever was nice. Yeah, use the leftovers. The like recycling is a really important thing because it's so expensive in the beginning. And one thing that I found, because not everyone has a wall, but maybe you have a backyard, and then maybe you want to try something big. And I don't know how it is here, but instead of canvases, because canvases are too expensive to just go and try out stuff with. But I found out that you can get wherever there's a bike shop, like bicycles, they have huge boxes that the product comes in. So the carton, the bicycle boxes are really stable, and if you use them and just work on them, it's an interesting material, and it's cheap, and they're throwing it away anyway. So, and also, like whenever you go there, if there are stores with big appliances like the TVs that size, they come in big boxes. You could just build your own canvas out of wrapping the thing with wallpaper and newspapers, and just kind of glue it, and then to glue it together, and then you have a big, very easy to lift canvas to paint on. That would be like a big, very inexpensive size to work with, and then you have two sides too. So if you mess up, you just turn it around. Yeah.
Oh, also pro tip, always carry toenail clippers that have a nail file on them, because the times that I've had a lift key get lost, or the organizer has it and got drunk last night and can't meet you at the wall and only speaks Japanese, or like something like that happens, and I'm like, okay, I'm here to paint, I'm here for like one more day, and you can't get the lift to start, the odds that lift will start if you stick a nail file into the keyhole are kind of high. I've done it so many times. It's not all brands, but like literally it says save my butt so many times. Pro tip, yeah.
So when folks are traveling to paint murals, do you have tips on how to like make contacts in spaces where you've never been or find walls? Like for instance, if I'm going to say like the Europe or like England in a couple months or something, like how do you reach out in advance and find those spaces, make those connections in places you've never been?
I have always, like, from the very beginning, I will usually just take one of my best murals, post it on Instagram, and be like, "Hey, I'm gonna be here at this time. Any info?" And 9 times out of 10, someone will DM you and give you some information, and you just like follow that thread and follow that thread, or reach out to an artist you know lives there. They might give you some info, and like people are really generous in this scene because they know what it's like to go through that, and then like, you know, on the other side of that, like when people come to LA, if you come to LA and you want to like a wall or want to hang out, or like I have so much spray paint, like if you want to come to LA and try to hit a wall, like I will give you spray paint. And especially like for femme folks in the scene, like we like hopefully you'll be able to like make your way around in that sense. The internet is great for that. I'm super grateful for that. And then yeah, you'll just make friends through that, and like hopefully they can refer you to someone else. That's honestly how I still do it 10 years later.
I think a couple of times, and maybe more than a couple of times, but I think a great resource is finding out who's selling the spray paint in that place. They have a lot of information. They can tell you if there's legal walls, especially like in Europe. You can't find many walls because it's all like very old, ancient things that then you can't paint. So they'll tell you where you can paint, where to go. I've been like way back in 2009 visiting Spain, and I went to the shop, and then they hooked me up with like, oh, these guys are going out to paint now, go with them, and just bought my paint, and then had a whole like adventure. And yeah, so paint shops are really resourceful too if you're like on site.
I'm all about pioneering walls. So a lot of times people come to the Bay and they ask me for walls, and I hook them up with different walls and different folks. So that kind of allows me to, whenever I go wherever their city is, they're like, "Oh, we got you because you got our back." So that's a win. So helping other people, other artists that come to your city definitely like opens doors to wherever you want to go. Or they might know somebody that can help you out. It's dope too because with art you don't, even if you don't speak the same language, like y'all still can communicate visually. So yeah, just reach out, just be like, yo, who knows some artists out here, and somebody knows somebody.
Yeah, you can always call her. Personally, she's the chief. No, but I was just thinking about something, and this might be a way. There are so many street art photographers. So they might actually be a good well to tap into. I know them personally, and I know when I go to a city where they live, I will let them know that I'll be there, and because they want they want process photos, and so I'm in touch with them to get good photos for myself, but also to reconnect, and they might actually be helpful. Yeah. Oh, any more questions?
Relationship to the can and what like ties it so tightly to street art in particular versus like rollers or brushes, and what is it about that like icon or that tool that ties it to public art so much?
Since I have the mic, I'm just gonna answer that real quick, but then I'll pass it on. So I live in Germany, where there are two competing companies that have kind of dominated the spray can brands in their techniques, because Germany's a car producing country, and the paint that's in the spray cans, that is from that industry. So it's car paint basically, and that's why they were the first ones, Belton, like Molotov, and Montana cans. That comes both from Germany, and they were rivaling. And the German brands, both of them, they're not allowed to use fragrance like perfume anymore, and like versus the MTNs that are being produced in Barcelona and Spain. They still use vanilla scent, which is really bad, because then especially kids will be like, breathing in more deeply. And like, I love that. And it's yeah, but it's kind of trying not to show you the chemicals. And so you kind of, it's a whole technical field, but the end of it, why it's such a brilliant medium, it's because it is meant to last. So it's meant to last strong sun, and then also weather. Also, if the wall is dry, otherwise you'll just, if there's a drop, then you'll just seal it, and then once the bubble bursts, it'll open up the whole thing, and it'll calm down. But anyway, so I'm babbling. But so it is meant to last, and then also because of the color range that we have these days with all the brands across the board, you don't have to mix paint, to get to that exact color, but you'll always have that exact turquoise tone because the color is consistent. But if you have, if you mix your acrylic paint, you would have to, just work a lot more to get to that result. And acrylic paint with, it's a good tool, and it's cheap and all, but it is super, it dries fast, and it's just very heavy to carry around buckets and stuff. So it kind of is a thing when, for example, when I started painting, I didn't have a big crew, and I would bring my car and leave my paint in the car, and then just always take one can out or two cans out, and then paint, and then put it back in, because I didn't want to get mugged and lose all my paint. So it's kind of there's a lot of benefit to the product itself, but it's definitely like Fats said, you can always take a brush, no one is holding you back. If you do take a brush, though, you might want to think about investing into something to seal the paint in the end, because if you paint with acrylic paint, it never gets as brilliant, and if you put a sealer on it, and it will last longer. It adds brilliance to the blacks a lot of the time if you use black paint. So it's a technical thing. Sorry, we can always continue this discussion later, but it's not limiting. I'll pass the mic.
Speed of application. Yeah, vandalism. When it comes to vandalism, it's a tool created to mess up, not created to, but graffiti comes from this idea of taking back the city and going over industrial materials and metals and doorways and abandoned buildings and stuff, and so it's designed to last and show up in crazy spaces. So it's also just the feeling, the vibe of using a spray can. It's you can paint in the rain to a certain extent. You can paint in different temperatures and different, all different types of stuff. And it's also just the ethos of the spray can is very street. It's synonymous. And also, but it's also not necessary to be respected as a muralist using spray cans. What I've noticed about the mural industry is interesting. I didn't, I started painting some graffiti, but I didn't really start painting letters until 10 years later. I'm just starting to paint letters now, even though I paint illegally sometimes. But a lot of times my murals are respected more because I use spray paint. I found that not always, but it's less likely to get capped or defaced if you've used spray paint, because it's we're all trying to get better at this thing together, and people respect people who can use a tool as well as them or better than them. But on the other end of that, more seasoned muralist, I've noticed the way that it goes is you do spray paint for 10 years, and then you start getting weird things happen to your lungs, and then your body starts getting really weird. You get tired of having to drag all these huge bags of paint around, and I see a lot of really amazing muralists shift back to using brushes and rollers and really muting their color palettes to be able to be less impactful on the environment, or to be able to paint faster or smarter. So there's no rules surrounding it, but I do recognize that that's a thing that's happening. You'll see a lot of really seasoned spray paint muralists turning back to brushes and rollers. And I think the idea of just being fluid and successful with whatever tools you have in whatever country you are in, with whatever strictures you're given, is the mark of a true muralist.
I just want to add, since we're talking about spray paint and through my health journey, that protecting yourself is absolutely important. Cleaning your mask as well. Like you can actually just soak it with a little drop of bleach, or like getting in there and scrubbing it, and making sure that you're using a clean mask. You can keep the cartridges separate in a Ziploc bag. And then also too, keep in mind that if you're painting on canvas or cardboard, that's going to off gas. So you don't want to have that in your house, in your living environment. So keeping it separate, having a separate workspace is good. And the cans, I think maybe a small amount comes out of them. So you probably don't want to keep those in your living space as well. Like, but this is like, if there's going to be years and years of this going on, just ways to think of to protect yourself.
I was just also going to say, and I think you said it best, and maybe this is repetition, but through like an anthropological lens, it is the legacy of graffiti and hip hop, which sometimes now we see the scaling to commodification of street art, and money comes in. And now you see what used to happen in galleries, where galleries are curated. You're starting to see streets curated. And so I think that it's such a fascinating question, because we're now seeing, like, we forget where the can comes from because it's the way it just goes. But it's like, what was that history? Where does it come from? How do we pay homage to that? And what does it mean when we decide we want to paint on the street and you're using an aerosol can? Like, what's that history of that, and having that knowledge, and then understanding what your voice means when you're painting and engaging with everybody on the street. There was a question back.
Just a small technical question concerning the mask. How often do you change the cartridges?
Well, you don't want to smell the paint. That's one thing. So I think it's just how long have you used it? How much paint? Was there ventilation? How much ventilation? It just, I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm sure if we read the back of it, I mean, I just kind of go by like, I think, well, I mean, I guess it would depend like how long you've been using them for, but you don't want to keep using the same ones. You definitely want to use fresh ones as much as you can afford to.
I would say change them more often than you don't. Yeah, I think like just about 2 weeks ago, I bought myself a new mask and I feel so great. And I had my other mask, I don't know how long, but it just like, they become your little homes because they're like on your face. Yeah, make sure you, like, I would clean out my mask and everything, but I totally feel the difference now that I have a new one. Way less impact from the aerosol and also the thing. So if you're asking yourself if it's too old, maybe that's like, then you should be changing them.
You can also ask the if you're doing a festival, you can ask them to get you a new mask entirely or whatever, so you don't have to pay for those. And also gloves. I will not paint without wearing gloves. Number one, because paint on your skin is really bad. It goes into your bloodstream. Number two, if you have dope nails, you'll get ruined.
Do you have? Yeah, sorry.
My bad. I put dates on my mask filters so I can kind of remember them, and then also just look at them. Like if you can see the paint, then it's time to change them. So visually. And then I wanted to answer the last question. Graffiti was like one of the first art forms. Like people would chew up charcoal and like spit it on the wall and use their hands as stencils. And so it's really ancient. And I think the particles kind of allow you to see like what you actually see. Like when you look at things, you see particles and like fades, and it's easier to create kind of gradients and fades with spray paint too that you can't exactly get with a brush. I mean, you could sit there all day and fade, and it's not as easy. And something I've been doing lately, because you got spray paint is also good for covering like holes and cracks, but lately I've been painting something a solid color in buff paint and then going back and putting the aerosol on top of it, because I notice it fades a lot less and it lasts a lot longer. So that's something I just started doing.
Oh, okay. Should we have another question? Oh, yeah, yeah.
I have a technical question and then like a process question for later as bonus, depending on time. But my technical question is, how do you navigate like insurance when you're traveling abroad to do festivals, especially when you're working with like heavy machineries, and just like conversion of currencies and how that works with
Oh, currency.
insurance and payment.
Are you a lawyer?
Technical questions.
Yeah. I'm suspicious of you. No, but for me, I have to say, there are different laws everywhere, really, and so if you're not prepared to go into an international legal battle, like it doesn't really matter. It's not even worth the paper it's on, basically. So if you don't trust someone in the beginning, if you are doubting the communication at any point, it's better to pull out, because they might just rip you off, and there's no way you can go, and sue someone in a different country. It's just too complicated, and then it's just not worth it. And what you were talking about, copyrights of your work, well, in Germany we have a law that states that anyone can use anything, photograph anything in the public sphere, and use it and sell those photos, because as long as they don't use a drone or another a lift or something. So if it's very specific. So that means the moment you create something, and then you kind of have to let it go in some ways. And it's very specific. And then again, in the mural I showed you earlier, the collab with Lauren, it appears, or that wall, specific wall, it has appeared in The Rookie. That's a series on Netflix or something. Yeah, it has appeared there, and we were actually. Did you ever get the check? Yeah, so that's another thing. So they reached out and they asked, hey, so we get your signatures on this paper? We need this for legal thing. You're gonna get $300. I get it $300 for this. I never saw the check. She never saw the check. Like, it's kind of the thing. Is like it's nice if that appears, but but then on the other hand, if it's kind of out of your control, but that happens everywhere in the world. Things get bankrupt. It's just it's a chance you take when you create something or when you live. And also the currency thing. I mean, you could, when you agree to something, be cautious and be like, hey, let's write down in an email what I'm getting. Like, this is the artist fee, and I will get this. And then you say the dollars, like US or Canadian dollars or euros or whatever, and then you write that down. But then again, there's always something, currencies go up and down, and then bank fees or whatever attaches. So I don't know, it's just no real, I mean, in my experience, and I've been doing this for so long and living of this. I mean, my first job was at a circus. I just got cash in hand. I was best. But it was... for 22 years, I've been doing this, and it's always a risk. Like, there's just no safety, really.
Okay, this isn't advice. I'm just gonna tell you what I do. So I've been painting for 10 years, and when you see me driving a boom lift, it's like I'm better at driving a boom lift than I'm driving a car. Like, I'm like crawling all over, I'm like hanging off of it like Spider-Man. Like, I'm really good at driving lifts. Like, my mom will attest to this. I have never taken a lift class until they caught me last year in Montreal for a mural festival, and they captured me after 10 years and put me in like a 3-hour lift class, which was hilarious and awesome. And of course I drew all the way through it and kept getting in trouble like in high school. But then after that, I was only certified to drive a scissor lift in Quebec specifically, which like I was using a boom lift to make that mural. So it was like completely pointless. The point is, like, if you need to learn how to drive a lift safely, and it's really easy. We're all very intelligent people. If a client is requiring you to be certified to do something, okay, this is not advice. What I was doing yesterday is photoshopping certification to paint a mural, and nobody that I care about is listening to this. So like, because it's really expensive and time sucking to do that, and I know how to use all this equipment, so that's what I have been doing. And I'm not telling you to do that. I'm just telling you what I've been doing.
I have to say, you didn't listen to my advice. I gave you an advice so you can get an international certificate because there is no such thing as a driver's license for these things because a driver's license would acquire a database with a number and then your name shows up. But there's no such thing. So you can get a certificate though, and you can do that online. And actually, there is one. It's an international license, and there is one that is run by a company from Canada. And I sat through this. It was an online class, and I sat through this for 2 hours, and it's kind of a multiple choice. So first you have the lesson, and then you have to go, and then like if you put the wrong thing in for like 3 times, then they'll kick you out and you have to start the program new. But that was the cheapest thing I found, and it's like 70 Canadian dollars, and it's so worth it. And after you've done this, you can always like Photoshop it for your like, but like first take that class.
So I just wanted to school you guys. No, just kidding. No, just because Ontario is super strict, even more than Quebec. It's super strict about working, all of these working at heights, working at that. And you do need a certificate here in Ontario to even, I think, climb a ladder now. So I know that Mural Routes does training with these companies, and they're... no, not well. They actually show you how you should and should not, but it's part of the working at heights. So you have level 1 is working at heights, and I'm mostly sure that you guys know about it. And you have to have the certification with you. And I'm not sure if they put you on a database. It is a database because it's on the for Ontario and Canada, yeah, because it's very specific. So you do have to have that, and then you have your scissor lift, and then the different. Like a boom lift, so then you work out and you have to pay for those certifications because there are Ontario, I'm not sure what they call them, not the police, but they're like the they're like the Canadian people who look out for health and safety of the workers. So you have to have that because you're considered a construction worker. And that's something that we haven't touched upon because we're all glorifying it, but it's basically we are construction workers, and yeah, so those are the laws of Ontario.
Is that only for, because it's very different between a private wall or a public wall?
No, all walls. So even if you're on a private property, you still need, because you are considered a worker. Even if you're your own owner of your own company, you have to obey by those laws because it's part of the law.
I guess that's really different from like in every country.
Yeah, like when we would go paint in the States, like, or in any, like in so many other countries, like the scaffolds are going like this and you have to like paint on a rock and like, but because we are contextualized here, those are very important things that you have to know we do have health insurance. I think that's why that they're very, that's why they're very vigilant, because they don't want you falling off the ladder and then having to pay for that.
So it's also linked to union and workers' rights, because you had like in the construction field, you have a lot of workers that lost their life or have like disabilities. Like an accident on a lift is actually pretty hardcore. Like you can be off by a slight angle and you will be catapulted like very far and might not make it. So we all have the experience of having gone on lifts without the training and done like the wild, and we can glorify it. It's true. Like we painted without certification too. But I think that if you have the opportunity to learn, to have like a teacher to learn it, it's empowering. It's awesome. And you know what the angles mean, why it needs to be like this, what you can do and create with the lift.
So I have a license. That is a requirement in Dubai, where I spent half the year. It's an international certification. It's a full day program. You spend half of that time on lifts. I believe they actually do it out in Mississauga. It's called iPath. And it does go into a database, and there's a whole app where you can log all the lifts and machines that you use. It's actually really useful. But more than anything, you're getting hands-on training on scissor lifts and boom lifts.
Scissors and booms. I think so. It's International Platform Access Federation, maybe.
I think also your question for insurance, there's very specific to Ontario and Canada too. So here you need a lot of organizations and murals will ask you for you to be certified. So you can get in touch with any insurance or most insurance companies, depending on what level of murals that you're doing. But if you're starting out and using a scissor lift or making below a certain amount of money a year, like those home and car insurance places will also can cover your painting insurance too. So you just have to ask and you can get quotes and you can get different things. But the insurance companies, it's very hard to find one that will cover you internationally. So if you're doing work internationally, the organization who's inviting you, you can ask them and they should have insurance for their workers. So that's something that we really learned actually within these certification heights. They really make it important. And I think it's really great that you as a worker have all the rights to say no to a job if you feel it's dangerous, which I have actually done. When you're putting yourself at danger, you have all the right to say, no, I'm not going to do this because it's going to be not beneficial to my health if I die. So so if you're going there, you have to make sure, and there's always that risk, like you said.
We've only talked about boom lift and such, but there are also those drop stages, those swing stages. That's a different thing too. And ultimately, I guess, I mean, how would you get experience with this? Maybe really, it comes to mind, volunteering at a festival or something. That's probably a really, really good way. Instead of taking a vacation, just spending a whole week at a production site. And then all those questions will probably be answered not by the artists, but by production managers who are there specifically for that. Because I know that some people also don't feel comfortable with heights. And not all the muralists are born freaks. Yeah, some are very, very aware of the dangers that come with it. But then for them, it's really important to have, a secure setting, and those production managers will have all the answers and stuff. So, I mean, and then also if I take it you're worried about things going wrong, that's just, I'm not sure. I mean, that's saying a lot, but I'm then not sure maybe if a big mural is the way you want to go. Maybe you want to do a long mural, like not like a large, like not a high wall, but just a long wall, because then you are close to the ground and you take a household ladder and then it's fine, because that's the thing. You need to don't pressure yourself with, first of all, an artistic expression, and then also with the whole other stuff that entails the whole construction worker thing. So if you want to try out working in that sphere, maybe you do look at spaces that are not adding that dangerous aspect to it.
I'm seeing the time. Yeah, 5 minutes. So we're going to wrap it up, and maybe just a quick capture from each of you, sentence or two. In your imaginations, where do you see, or your hearts, where do you see muralism going? Where would you love it to see going as a culture?
As a culture,
However you want it.
I just was thinking of augmented reality and video projections and that sort of thing, but
I want to be 85 with my can and on my lift, and seeing the next generations happy painting their walls, and see my daughter painting too with us.
Yeah, me too. That's dope. I meant to say this earlier, but I think that everyone sitting here, this is a fine distinction that I might not be able to see unless you've been in this scene for a long time, but I see a lot of like a lot of murals now, more corporate ones end up just being kind of like collages put through a filter, projected on a wall, and then repeated. And we're talking about art here. Like, I always want to go back to like, what are you saying? Like, what's your point of view? Where's your voice? And I think everyone here has like an element of illustration or drawing or voice to their work, which I love, and it's harder and harder to find in this scene. People who like work in their sketchbooks or like go through that like, I think you'd be astounded to find how rarely a muralist has like a drawing stage anymore. So it's just like stuff from the internet, like put through like a filter with some colors added and like organized and then projected and then repeated. And it's just, it gets so far away from the human part of it that it just bores me to death, some of it. So I want to see, especially with like the emergence of AI, I want to see like a return to the artist, like the illustrator, the like process, the sketchbook, the rawness of it. And I want to see more of the artist's hand and a point of view. I don't even like, I'm not even talking about style really, but like, I just, when you see a mural and it makes you feel something. So rarely anymore does it make me feel something, even like my own stuff sometimes. I just want to feel things basically. And then I want people to get paid also.
Yeah. Yeah, all of that has been said. I mean, personally, I kind of do want to leave the street art world at some point, knowing that it has empowered people, and does that because street art was, I mean, I'm gonna actually say urban art and include street art and graffiti in it. So urban art was the first global art movement ever because of social media and because of us being able to connect, because before that it was happening here in the world and there in the world, and you would read about it later or something, but everything happening simultaneously, that had never happened before. Now we have another global movement, which was digital art. That was the next one, but it was the first one, and to have been part of that, I just wanted to continue being interesting and to matter. And to matter, it needs to be personal. I think that's really where that comes from. So maybe the walls are not going to be as huge always, but smaller walls still have an impact. So at some point, because I'm thinking of retiring and just living with animals at some point, but when I visit cities, I want to see art everywhere.
I just think it's been like a real tool for me to heal. And they say trauma affects us 7 generations in the past. And so I just want to help other folks heal and have this be a tool that continues. And it's just I don't know if I want to be 85 and still painting, but that's pretty dope. Yeah, it's just something I love, and I'm just happy to be doing what I love. So give thanks.
Before we wrap up, I wanted to say thank you to Mural Routes. The whole Mural Routes team. And thank you, of course, to the panelists for being so quick to be like, yes, we'll be there. This was amazing. And yeah.
But what's your future? Yeah. You answer the question.
I'm going to go take some cold medication.
Oh, cool.
I'll use yours.
Gracias, Marta.
If I'm sick tomorrow, you know why. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone. It's been a long day. Thank you to our guest artists, like super appreciated. This is the first time that, I think anybody's doing this in Toronto. So there was like zero expectation, and now we're setting a really high bar. And now it's like everyone is asking, so when do we do this again? Well, we'll see. That's all I can say. So thanks again. Thank you for your time, your generosity, for being here in person, and just like, as Fatima said, like for saying yes right away. I didn't even have to go back and forth. Everyone was like, yes, let's do this. That's super appreciated. The energy was felt. And I hope everyone would agree to that. Thank you, everyone, for being here today, for deciding to spend your Saturday with us. Thank you to the Mural Routes team, Karen, Kim, Devin, Eric, thank you so much for all the additional support. Super appreciated. And I have to thank, our funders again, the Canada Council for the Arts, who give us funding for this particular program, and our operating funders, Toronto Arts Council and the Ontario Arts Council. And with that, I think we can spend another 20 minutes in the space if people want to chat with each other. And there's food to take home because we have lots of leftover food. So if you guys want to take dinner home, please, by all means. Yes, and the one thing that's going to happen in this space is we need to put it back to what it looked like this morning. So we're going to start moving chairs around and all of that. But please, in the kitchen area, if you want to have conversations, please do so. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Oh, afterwards, she might have to like just
One sec, Jenny. One sec.